Hello, thank you so much, Diane, and thank you, Olga, as well. And that was great with Hillary. In fact, I've travelled 60 miles to come to Hillary's house, and it's really good to hear the story and to hear about Lucy, some of your developments, Diane, and like you, I love cardio and strength training. You do have to make an effort, but it was Andy's influence who said to me, I shouldn't be doing just swimming. I need to do the strength training as well. And he's got me into that. So it's looking after your whole body. So I'm just continuing now with this topic of health. And my title is Hungry for Health. And I got that title, really, I was inspired by Les Brown's book, You've Got to Be Hungry. And he's the American motivational speaker. And you may realize that he is a role model for health. Many years ago, he had stage 4 prostate cancer, and the doctors told him that he didn't have very long to go. And ever since that time, he's recovered and he's a fantastic motivational speaker. He was 80 this year, and he still does seminars and motivates everybody to be healthy and to reach their full potential. He tells everybody you've got greatness in you, which is so true. And he's a living example of someone who's motivating everybody to persevere. And he really stresses that you need to have discipline, which we don't hear about a lot these days. And you're the one who have to make an effort to keep your health in check. And he has so much energy. So have you ever thought of perhaps being a role model for health, or do you feel that you've got so many excuses that you're perhaps too old or you don't know what to do? Unlike Les, who tells everybody that they can be motivated and it's never too old, you're never too old to start. And then there's also from America, we've got Elaine Lelaine, Jack LaLanne's wife, when he was alive. She was 99 this year, and her background is in health and fitness. And Dr. Forbes Riley celebrated her birthday party, and she's on the way to becoming 100, and she's just so independent. So she's a wonderful role model. And Dr. Forbes Riley herself has such vitality and energy that many people who are many years younger would envy. So we've got all these celebrities, and you can think of other celebrities who could be role models to you. But how about getting it closer to home and thinking of people that you know? So in my case, there was a wonderful family friend who sadly died at age 95. But she was my role model because at 85, she was playing tennis 3 times a week. And then when she got into her 90s, everybody was asking her how she kept so young. And she said it was because she didn't like to mix with older people who were constantly complaining about aches and pains. She just wanted to be around young people. And when I was around her, she was always so interested to find out about me and to find out about how I was getting on. She was so other people orientated, and she had so much energy and wisdom to give to people that I would look at her and not realize that she was in her 90s. And I really aspire to be like her. So there's Hillary as well, who spoke today, who's a few years older than me, and also a friend who is precisely 10 years and 1 month older than me. And she's got such joie de vivre. She's really enthusiastic, so fit and healthy that I think, wow, if I can be like that in 10 years' time. And because I used to work with her and I've known her for 30 years, and her husband as well, who sadly died from prostate cancer. But he was, and she is fantastic role models. So have you ever thought of being a role model? And in a small way, I am a role model to some of my coaching clients who I help coach ladies to overcome emotional eating, to improve their health conditions. And Diane's already mentioned about high cholesterol and hypertension. One of my clients no longer takes any medication for hypertension anymore. And another client doesn't take medication for diabetes. And this is all through making lots of tiny changes over time and being persistent and consistent. So I'm pretty fit and healthy, and I have been for some time, but it wasn't always like that, because I did have high cholesterol and I did have pre-diabetes, but a doctor was able to prescribe exercise to me and going to the gym, which I did. I had a personal trainer, a lady at the time, and she helped me to navigate all the machines at the gym. And through diet and exercise, I totally reversed pre-diabetes, also high cholesterol, so got that down to normal. And a spin-off was that I no longer had chronic insomnia. And that was, I think the insomnia came because I wasn't moving my body. So very often we take health for granted, and several people have said already that your health is your wealth. And we all know that if you don't have your wealth, your health, then you can't really do anything. And because I've enjoyed a lot of good health over the years, I'd almost forgotten what it would be like to have no health until about 6 weeks ago. And out of nowhere, I suddenly got constipation, and I knew where it came from. I wasn't drinking enough water, and that's a cue actually to have a quick drink of water, because it's so important to keep hydrated. And I got constipation, and it went on for a week, and I didn't really think anything of it, thought that it was just a phase. And then it went on for a second week, and I don't like taking any medication at all. And I was researching on the internet what I could do. And I'm sorry about the subject matter of constipation, but our bodies are so marvelous that we take it for granted that they get rid of the waste. And when I wasn't able to do that, it was terrible. And then I just got into such a terrible state that I couldn't get out of bed. I had very little energy. And what was at the back of my mind was that I'm doing this talk about being hungry for health. And there I was feeling so ill. So ultimately, I went to the doctor. I did take some Senna tablets, and that did the trick. And I've been fine ever since. But it's just really a heads up to have lots of water. And I didn't have enough at the time. So that's, and now we know about hydrogenated water. That's even more exciting. So anyway, when we're thinking about health, there are so many things that you need to think about, and Hillary's mentioned some about obviously keeping hydrated. So that's what you're drinking, what you're eating, and you, like me, may have thought that you want to concentrate on your health. So you think about what you're putting into your body, about movement and exercise, everything that you can do in terms of sleeping. And if you're like me, you'll start off really motivated, have a long list of things to do. And then the more you try to do in terms of exercise, the more overwhelming it seems to be. And then you miss a day and miss a few exercises, and then you're in a worse state. So this was how I often operated. And then I got very depressed about not keeping up with my health, until I heard what Jim Collins, the business leader, said. And he said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. So the main thing is to, if you want to improve your health and achieve lasting transformation, it's not about doing more, it's about doing way, way less, and about simplifying. So when I realized that you could just do up to 3 things, you don't even have to do 3 things. Think of just one habit that you've got at the moment that's not serving you. And what you can do is just swap that habit. And it might take a month, it might take even longer, because UCLA say in terms of habits that it takes 66 days to establish a new habit. And they say 100 days in some variations of the research. So as Hilary said, it's not a short-term fix. And the problem about health, improving your health, is that you can do these things and working with clients that they can consistently work on making an effort in terms of what they're eating and their exercise. And they may not even see any changes in their body for at least 9 weeks. So it is difficult to think about health, but you need to start with the end in mind. And that's why it's so good to have the role models, but better still for you to think about what you want to be like. So think about your future self. And this is what happens when I start off with clients, that we think about our future self in 8 weeks, because we're together for 8 weeks initially. And we even write a letter, because I join in as well. And I think that this commitment to health will be a lifelong commitment for me, and certainly for many clients, because it can be exciting and it should be fun. And we heard about Andy, how he's always smiling. And I realized over time that I was getting very, very serious. Some days I wouldn't even smile. And I'm sure you've had the same experience, where we feel that we take ourselves and life too seriously. And then this is why it's so easy not to do exercise, because when I was in a very busy corporate job, I would just go to the garage at lunchtime, get a sandwich, and then evenings were that I would just have a ready-made meal and have terrible habits, not do any exercise until I was diagnosed with the high cholesterol. And then I thought, well, how am I going to fit in this exercise? I've got the free membership of the gym and I can go swimming, but how can I fit it into a very, very busy schedule anyway? And this is where I came across habit stacking, because I was already traveling 30 miles to work. And what I realized was that if I could just leave the house a bit earlier, I would miss all the traffic, which I did. I went to the local swimming pool and I did this consistently every day. And it was just, I was going out of the house anyway, so I didn't have to make that specific effort. I just had to go to the swimming pool. And then I would get there by 7 o'clock. And at that time, Dr. Michael Mosley from England had done a lot about intermittent fasting, which is something that I did practice at the time and still do occasionally, because I'm convinced of the benefits. But he'd also done a lot about high intensity interval training. So sometimes if I got stuck in traffic, I might only have 15 minutes at the swimming pool. And habit stacking it just means that if you've got one thing that you already like to do, so for example, or if you have a daily habit. So my habit was that I was going to work anyway, so I could just fit in the swimming on top of my journey to work. And again, it's like, in a small way, habit stacking could be, for example, if you want to go walking, that's one habit that you're doing, but you could also decide to have another habit, and that is to listen to a podcast or your favorite playlist. And that adds the interesting dimension to going walking, and it makes it far more enjoyable. So I was able to do something that I was doing anyway, which was going to work. And then I could just, when I thought there's no time that I have for exercise because I've got such a busy time anyway at work, I realized that if I could make a commitment to myself, which I did, and actually keep it, and that was to go swimming every day. And at first it was hard because particularly if it's dark in the morning. And everybody talks about, oh, I go to the gym and I do these things, as though they find it very, very easy. But just know that it is really, really difficult. And what's interesting is that I don't go to a regular job at the moment. So now when I go swimming in the morning and it's dark, I don't have that incentive. Well, I'm going to work anyway, like a lot of the people at the pool, they just go on the way to their job. I don't do that. So I have to make a special effort to go to the pool. But because I made this commitment to myself, it's something that I really fiercely guard. And I do know that Hilary goes to the gym 3 times a week with Andy, and she blocks out that time, and it's her sacrosanct time. So you really need to make an effort to be able to do all of this. Make these promises to yourself and stick to them. And that's something that Simon Sinek says, that discipline is the idea of making a promise to yourself and sticking to it. And nobody feels like going to the gym, I don't, or going swimming. But once you're there, I've never actually been to the pool and thought when I'm there, I'm sorry I came. It's always absolutely worth going. So this is why it's so good to simplify your life. And when I was doing swimming and going to work, that was when I started to say no to other things, because I wanted to guard my time. And so often we don't put ourselves first. And you've heard the expression about you need to have a full cup to be able to operate and really live life to the full. So it's like when you're on a plane and they always say, put your own oxygen mask on first. So if you're able to make an effort yourself to be fit and healthy, then you can help other people, and you might even be a role model for them and help them as well. So I've loved going swimming, still do it. I've even been swimming a mile because the pool attendant told me, he said, do you realise that if you do 64 lengths, it's a mile? And I was getting back into butterfly swimming because that's something that I used to do competitively as a child. And the only reason I decided to do one was that one length of butterfly, I wouldn't do any more. I'd just do most recently, a 4x1 medley, which is one length of butterfly, one length of backstroke, breaststroke and front crawl. But one day, another lady from a different pool came into our pool and she did 10 lengths of butterfly. And I said, I can't believe that you've done 10 lengths of butterfly. And she said, just try doing 2 lengths. She said, you can just stop. And I thought, it's years since I've done more than 1 length of butterfly. But because she said, you can stop and it's fine, I pushed myself to do 2 lengths of butterfly. And then before I realised it, I'd done 4 lengths of butterfly. And this is 100 metres of butterfly. And I couldn't believe it, because it's almost like Roger Bannister when people said you couldn't do the 4 minutes mile. And I pushed myself. And what I realise is that sometimes we put all these limits on ourselves. And so now I often do 10 lengths of butterfly. But when the pool attendant said, if you do, it was one day over the half-term break when the pool was open for longer, he said, if you persist, you can do 64 lengths. So I did, in blocks of 10, I did 64 lengths of butterfly just because I wasn't limiting myself. And I think so often we can limit ourselves in what we're actually doing. And if you push yourself, it's amazing what you can achieve. So I like to think of our health journey as a holistic journey. So think of body, soul and spirit. And also, if you think of your life as a garden, It can be, you can think that you've got a really beautiful garden, but just think of the flowers, the bushes, but you may have some weeds in there. So when I'm thinking of health, thinking of my life as my body, that's the way that you move. Obviously, everybody sees your body, and it's like the soil in the garden. Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions, and you can do things in a practical way to improve your mind. So reading books that are uplifting, and also doing research about health, fitness, and everything else. And then your spirit is your deeper purpose, and that can even be your legacy. So if you're thinking, how do you want to be remembered? I know that in Anne's case, when she did die at the age of 95, she left a fantastic legacy because she was so other people centered. She was so enthusiastic about everything that she did. And that's how I just thought, wow, to be remembered like that. And then all the members of her family talked about her career, and she worked when it was very unusual for women to work. She worked as a domestic health, domestic science teacher. So she was always so interested in the components of food and healthy living. And I learned an awful lot from her. So in terms of habits, what James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits is that you need to make your habits obvious. So for example, if you're going to increase the amount of walking that you do, so to make it obvious, you have to put your walking shoes by the door. And I do that even now with swimming, that the night before I get my sports bag ready, I go to bed at a reasonable time because the pool's open really early. So I've thought about all these things in a practical way, and you have to make your habit obvious, then you make it attractive. So regarding walking, we've already talked about the possibility of having a playlist or even walking with somebody else to make it attractive. And that's why I love going swimming, because it's quite a social occasion. We have the same people at the pool, ladies and men, all the time, and we're always having banter, and we know all about the lives of the other people there. And when one of the ladies was involved in an Indian dancing festival, we all supported her from the pool. And it was a wonderful occasion, and we just have such fun there. And sometimes, as you know, with the lanes, that people end up touching you inadvertently or not. And so there really is a lot of fun and banter, even just with swimming, and likewise with other sports. So habits, according to James Clear, if you make them obvious and then attractive, then it has to be easy. So if you're just starting off, you don't do a walk for about an hour, which is so off-putting. You have to start with 10 to 15 minutes. That's if you are a seasoned walker, or even 2 minutes. So just make it easy. And then when you've actually achieved that, it's something to celebrate and enjoy. And then the final thing that he says, is that it should be satisfying. So I've done a lot of work on habits, and you can buy wonderful apps. Some have free aspects to them. And I use Habit Bull, which is about having a streak. And you can also do it on a calendar. Every day you do an exercise, you could just put a cross on a calendar. And it's like gamifying the habit. And it makes it really satisfying, because you can look at your streak. And I've done swimming for so many days on end. And I think, wow, I can't believe I've done all these days of swimming. So that makes it fantastic and really, really satisfying. And he said that if you do those 4 things, and he calls it the 4 laws of carrying out habits, that it makes it far more likely that you're able to stick to the habits. And just to know as well that you do need persistence for all of this, and it is absolutely worth doing. So,
Christy, I just wanted to jump in for a second. I know we're running kind of short on time. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on time. So we only get about less than a minute.
yeah, so what I'll just say is that back to back to Jim Collins, if you have more than three priorities, you have none. So what I'd like to say is, well, the first thing is that, and I haven't even touched on it, that I do help ladies to overcome emotional eating. And we use all sorts of things like having a hunger scale. So are you eating because of your emotions, or are you eating because you're thirsty, or are you eating because you're sad, mad, angry, or even glad, happy? So there are things like the hunger scale and also food mood diary. And I'm sure if you've done anything about emotional eating, you'll know about some of the tools that we use. But I am offering three 30-minute sessions, and I'm not going to get you to guess my age because that would be far too embarrassing. But the Body Tracks machine says that my metabolic age is actually 15 years younger than my actual age, but I'm not going to go there. Just email me at christiekorchak@gmail.com and we'll have a proper discussion about emotional eating, because I didn't touch on that. And also, what I would love to do is to throw out the challenge to you to think, what three habits, if you did them consistently, would make the biggest difference in your life? So can you actually now think of three habits, and ideally one habit for your body, one habit for your soul, which is your mind, your will, and your emotions. And we haven't really elaborated on that. And one habit for your spirit, which is your purpose in life. And it's all about the legacy that you're going to leave. And hopefully you can be a role model for other people in the area of health, because I certainly didn't think that I would be able to swim a mile of butterfly a few years ago, because I wasn't even doing any exercise. So this just shows that if I can do it, and if Hillary can do it, you can do it too. Thank you.